Hello and welcome to Wavescan, the international DX program from Adventist World Radio. Researched and written in Indianapolis by Dr. Adrian Peterson and produced in the studios of WRMI in Miami, Florida. I'm Jeff White. Today on Wavescan, radio broadcasting in the land of the mountain lion, Part 2, the radio era on shortwave and medium wave. Also in our focus on Africa, shortwave for Senegal, and our Philippine DX report. Wavescan presents Focus on Africa, a year-long series of reports about shortwave broadcasting and listening on the African continent. This is now part 2 in our series of topics on the story of radio broadcasting in the coastal African country of Sierra Leone. And we cover the entire era of shortwave and medium wave broadcasting, which stretches from 1951 to 2002. We begin with the brief introduction of an experimental broadcast service on shortwave from their capital city, Freetown. It was in the earlier part of the year 1951 that this experimental radio broadcasting service was introduced, and it was on the air from a 300-watt transmitter on the frequency 9630 kilohertz. It would be presumed that this was a utility transmitter already in use for communication purposes. The address for postal communication was given as the Public Relations Office at 3B Trelawney Street in Freetown. Due to a lack of adequate funding, this initial experimental radio broadcasting service was terminated in July, no more than a few months after its original introduction. The 1952 edition of the World Radio Handbook lists this shortwave station, though by this time this program service was already ended. However, 3 years later, a new endeavor began for the commencement of a radio broadcasting service in Sierra Leone. The British government provided a grant to establish a radio broadcasting station, and an engineer from the BBC London was sent out to Freetown to work on this new facility. This new radio broadcasting station was officially inaugurated in 1956 with a new set of studios at Padamba Road, New England, a new 5-kilowatt shortwave transmitter on top of the hill at Hill Station, and the government administration of the station at the Public Relations Office, now located at 26A Westmoreland Street in Freetown. The signal from the shortwave transmitter on the familiar channel 3316 kilohertz was fed into a single-wire dipole antenna, and the programming was mainly an off-air relay on shortwave from the BBC in London. The first known reception report for the broadcasts of the new Sierra Leone Broadcasting Service with the 5-kilowatt transmitter on 3316 kilohertz at the Hilltop location was from Sweden and dated around September 1956. However, even though QSL cards were printed subsequently, most reception reports were ignored due to limited funding for the operation of the station. Now, by the time the engineer from London finally took over as the station director in April 1958, he found the station in complete disarray. The station was run down, the finances were an unorganized mess, the studio had no soundproofing, the one microphone was suspended from the ceiling, the transmitter was running at low power, no spare parts were available, and the Hilltop property was so small that there was insufficient space for an adequate antenna system. Consequently, ambitious plans were developed for nationwide radio coverage, with new studios and transmitters in Freetown, regional studios at 7 country locations, and 3 shortwave transmitters at 10 kilowatts at Magburaka in the center of the country. These tentative plans were subsequently modified with the suggestion of providing nationwide radio coverage via a 100-kilowatt shortwave transmitter on the edge of Freetown. However, almost none of these projected plans were ever implemented. What actually happened was that the original studios at Pemba Road were refurbished and enlarged, and a new and more adequate transmitter station was built on a new site at Goderich, closer to the Atlantic Ocean. 2 Marconi transmitters at 10 kilowatts each were installed, one for medium wave coverage of the capital city area, and a shortwave model BD-268 for nationwide coverage. A multi-element antenna system was installed for national coverage on shortwave. The 5-kilowatt shortwave transmitter was also removed from the Hill station and reinstalled at the new Goderich facility. The inauguration of this new medium wave and shortwave station took place in 1961. The BBC engineer left Sierra Leone in the same year, 1961, and returned to London, and by this time most of the developmental work had been completed. During the 1980s, the two Marconi transmitters, 10 kilowatts each, on medium wave and shortwave, were replaced by two Continentals at the same power output, and then some 10 years later, in 1995, these two Continentals were refurbished. During an attack by the Nigerian Air Force on October 16, 1997, it was stated that a large radio station was destroyed in a bombing run. However, the station that was destroyed was an FM and TV station on top of Lester Peak in Freetown, not the medium wave and shortwave station at Goderich. A 50-kilowatt medium wave station was on the air for a few years from a country location at Kenema, and the main city service on medium wave was provided with a 50-kilowatt transmitter around the same time. In 1966, it was stated, a 1/2-kilowatt Redaphone shortwave transmitter was in use on the frequency 5980 kHz, and according to the World Radio TV Handbook, this unit was on the air for a few years, into the earlier 1970s. It would be presumed that this low-powered transmitter was also located at the Goderich transmitter station. The final listing for medium wave coverage in Sierra Leone is shown in the World Radio TV Handbook for the year 2002, and the final listing for shortwave is shown as the year 2005, though it was inactive at the time. The last known logging of the 10-kilowatt shortwave unit on the familiar channel 3316 kHz is found in the British DX Club Bulletin in January 2001. All radio broadcasting coverage anywhere in Sierra Leone these days is on the standard FM band 2. The usual broadcast frequencies on medium wave in Freetown were around the 1200 kHz range, at 1200, 1205, and 1206 kHz, with 10 kilowatts initially and 50 kilowatts during the subsequent era. On shortwave, the usual frequencies at Hill Station and Goderich were 3316 kHz and 5980 kHz, initially with 5 kilowatts and subsequently with 10 kilowatts. Anyone who holds a valid QSL letter or the printed QSL card from the Sierra Leone Broadcasting Station does indeed hold a historic treasure from the earlier days of radio broadcasting in this small West African country. Next time here in Wavescan, the shortwave station in Sierra Leone meets its Waterloo.
You're listening to Wavescan from Adventist World Radio. Send your comments and reception reports to Wavescan, Box 29235, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46229 in the United States. That's Wavescan, Box 29235, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46229 in the USA. Or you can email us at wavescan@awr.org. Our email once again, wavescan@awr.org.
Continuing now with our focus on West Africa, radio, and specifically shortwave radio, was introduced to the West African nation of Senegal by its French colonizers. Radio Senegal, or Radiodiffusion Télévision Sénégalaise, the government-owned public radio station, broadcast on shortwave for many years, both domestically and internationally. Here are a few historical recordings that came to us from Daniel Camporini in Argentina and his program Historias de Radio.
Sie hörten einen Sonderdienst aus Dakar, Radio Senegal auf 15.115 Kilohertz. Wir kommen wieder am nächsten Dienstag dieselbe Zeit und auf derselben Frequenz. You have just listened to a special service from Radio Senegal in Dakar on 15,115 kilocycles. We shall be back on Tuesday next at the same time and on the same frequency. Goodbye.
JP 22h, Simon Meledge. Bonsoir mesdames, bonsoir mesdemoiselles, messieurs, bonsoir et bienvenue à cette 4e édition du Journal Parlé que nous allons ouvrir par l'actualité chez nous avec tout d'abord les audiences du chef de l'État.
Radio Sénégal, chaîne nationale, kaddu gi bàyyi ko ci Dakar, Moussa Mbaye ci wàllu machine bi, mais duñu war a nekk ci CDM, Ibrahima Fall.
Amados ouvintes do canal internacional da Rádio Senegal, vocês podem escutar o vosso programa na língua portuguesa. Hoje vocês estão com um programa das Nações Unidas que fala sobre as mulheres nos países da expressão da língua portuguesa.
Some historical recordings there of Radio Senegal in different languages, which came to us from Daniel Camporini in Argentina. According to the British DX Club, Radio Senegal has not been noted on shortwave since 1997, and there's no other station in the country on shortwave at present either. However, at the recent High Frequency Coordination Conference in Tunisia, we had an opportunity to talk with Mamadou Mandiali Bodian of the Post and Telecommunication Regulatory Authority of Senegal, and he told us that the possibility exists for Senegal to resume shortwave broadcasting in the not-too-distant future.
Senegal, a long time ago, left that ban in the broadcasting for the FM mode.
But there were shortwave stations in the past.
Definitely, since it seems that my bosses that are from just the generation just before me, I'm 30 years old, so my bosses were telling me that, in the 70s, there were some like shortwave, like radio station broadcasting.
And were they broadcasting to an audience in Senegal on shortwave or to an external audience?
I think that was around Senegal and the countries that are around Senegal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But now what they did is that I think that's more because of the populations. They try to reach, like, the programs now are not intended to go far away. That's for regional stuff or like local programs.
Right,
so they are
right.
using the FM that is covering like smaller distances. I guess that's why. And the quality of sound too, that's what they say.
Now, I assume there's a government radio station in Senegal?
Yes, the government radio station has like some stations all around the country. Yeah, it is. You can get their programs everywhere, but those stations again are local, even if it's the government. But that's local programs. Yeah.
And what is that called?
RTS.
RTS.
Like Radio Télévision Sénégalaise.
Okay.
Senegalese radio and television.
Okay, and RTS does not have an external service then, trying to reach outside Senegal?
Yes, RTS has that, but not in the like broadcasting sound, but more in TV, and they use the satellite, and it is actually available all around the world. Yeah, in the States, in Europe, and in the South African continent, and also in the Maghreb.
In which language or languages?
No, usually that's in French. The official language is in French.
Okay.
So it's in French, but they have some programs that are in Wolof. In Wolof, also in some other languages, like the national language in Senegal is Wolof. Official language is French.
Okay.
And you have some other like languages like Peul, Serer, Jola, and they have some programs like in those.
So if there is no shortwave broadcasting going on in Senegal at present, what are you doing here at the HSTC conference?
Actually, I'm in charge of frequency coordination and notification for the regulatory authority. So we were advised by the ITU BR, the Radio Communication Bureau, that there was a regional coordination meeting that was taking place in Tunis, and it was a very good thing like to attend to. So we decided to come and see, because we still have the resources. We're not using them, but we still have the resources. And we know that, for example, with the DRM, that we can do, that the DRM is proposing like a quality of sound and like a coverage that is higher, than what we have in FM. And right now the FM band is really saturated in some cities in Senegal. So we're thinking about the transition from the analogic TV to the digital TV, but we are also thinking, for the future about like for the doing the same for the FM stations, analog FM stations right now, and and I think it can be a good solution. That's for me, that's a place to discover. So actually, that for me, that's just a first step into coming and see how it works, what is proposed there, what actually the organization of the meeting, and what is proposed there, what Senegal can win onto it, And I'll say that just by coming, I just discovered the software that is here, a planning software of Mr. Norbert Scholl.
So do you think there's interest in broadcasting from Senegal to abroad in order to promote Senegal or to reach Senegalese abroad? Or?
The two things. In order to promote Senegal, because first of all our programs usually, our official language is French. French is spoken, all around. And Senegalese also speak English. As you see, I'm speaking English. So, and to reach also Senegalese, like immigrants that are working abroad, out of Senegal. You have many, many, many Senegalese. And the Senegalese TV is working a lot outside of Senegal. Senegalese are demanders, if I say, of Senegalese programs. And I'm pretty sure that this kind of radio can work for them too. They will like it.
Has RTS or any other stations asked you to find out about the possibilities for DRM and for shortwave?
Actually, I'm working for the regulatory authority, so it is better for me, not for them to ask me, but I'm coming to see and see what can be, because usually that's for us our main objective is to open the market and give possibilities to all of them, show them where they can go to have let's say to develop that market for them, to be able to make money for them, but to be able to offer Senegalese populations some good services and at a good price too.
Now, I know most radio in Senegal now is FM, but are there shortwave receivers available, and do many people listen to shortwave in Senegal?
I think that there are still shortwave, because when I was younger, there were shortwave receivers, those old type of shortwave receivers. And in Africa, you always find old things, they keep them well. I'm pretty sure that even home, it seems that we have some like that. And I know that some of the programs, like RFI is still in the shortwave. I think that before there was like Voice of America or something.
Exactly.
Before I used to hear about that, and I think that some people are still, those. But let's say that that's more not radio amateur, but those that like that. They still use that.
So there may be some future for shortwave in Senegal.
For me, yes. Definitely with the DRM, I think that there's a future for it. And the second thing is that to reach more Senegalese abroad. The only thing is that I think that when that band was left, that was for the quality of sound, also the transmitters also. The thing is that, in those kind of countries, you have to maintain the transmitters. So big transmitters like AM transmitters are not very easy to maintain, and it takes it takes a lot of money, let's say. So they went more to smaller stations. But I think that definitely there will be a future. We just have to be proposed. We just have to offer, like, to the people, something that is good for them in price, quality of sound, and and with the let's say coming into the digital era, it is very good, because you can put many stations in one frequency band, and in one frequency, let's say channel, and then reach many people. With the DRM, since it can go far away, why not?
That was Mamadou Mandiali Bodian of the Senegalese Post and Telecommunications Regulatory Agency, speaking with us at the High Frequency Coordination Conference in Tunis at the end of January.
Radio Sénégal, les brèves.
21h Info Flash, Simon Meledge, comme tous les mardis, le président de la République a présidé ce matin la réunion.
Good evening. The time is precisely 8:42 hours Greenwich Mean Time, and you're listening to Chaîne en Terre from the Senegalese Radio and Television Network. The programme is brought to you tonight by Abdoulaye Fall and Mary Shaw. The headlines. A breakdown of relations between Belgrade and Tirana has stopped the influx of Albanian refugees. An American journalist is reported missing.
And thanks to Danielle Camporini for those historical recordings of Radio Senegal. Listening to Wavescan from Adventist World Radio. Now let's go to the Philippines and Henry Umanhai with his monthly DX report.
Hello everyone, to our dear shortwave listeners. Good evening, good morning, wherever you are. Welcome to the March 10th edition of the Philippine DX News. This is report number 73. I'm Henry Umaday in Antique, Central Philippines. Glad to be back and thank you for listening. Let me thank our DXer friends for the reception reports and for keeping in touch. Thank you very much. Reception logs for February 2013. February 1, Voice of America on 15150 in English at 2210 SIO 444. February 1, Radio Thailand on 9720 in English from Audantani at 1230 SIO 333. February 1, Adventist World Radio on 17540 in Tagalog, Filipino from Guam at 1030 SIO 444. February 1, Voice of Vietnam on 12020 in English from Suntay at 100 SIO 333. February 1, Radio Kuwait Filipino Service on 15540 in Filipino from Cab at 2210 SIO 444. February 3, KBS World Radio 9750 in English from Kimche at 1330 SIO 444. February 3, Radio Japan on 11925 in English from Yamata at 1400 SIO 444. February 3, Voice of Russia on 7260 in English at 1430 SIO 444. February 6, Voice of Korea on 9730 in English from Kujang at 0400 SIO 444. February 6, Radio China Radio International on 17725 in English from Beijing at 410 SIO 444. February 7, Adventist World Radio on 15255 in English from Trincomalee at 1530 SIO 333. February 7, All India Radio on 9690 in English from Bangalore at 1420 SIO 444. February 7, Voice of America on 7575 in English from Tinang at 1500 SIO 454. February 8, Voice of Mongolia on 9665 in English from Ulaanbaatar at 1531 SIO 333. February 8, Radio Thailand on 9720 from Audantani in English at 1250 SIO 444. February 10, Radio Exterior de España on 11910 from Notblejas in Spanish at 1230 SIO 443. February 10, Radio Kuwait Filipino Service on 15540 from Cab at 1045 SIO 443. February 13, Voice of Russia on 11840 in English at 1432 SIO 444. February 14, WYFR Family Radio on 9465 in English from Tashkent at 1250 SIO 333. February 14, Voice of America on 12150 in English from Tinang at 1250 SIO 444. February 14, Fan American Broadcasting Corporation on 15205 in English from France at 1400 SIO 333. February 14, Adventist World Radio on 11740 from Guam at 1630 SIO 444. February 18, Radio Taiwan International on 11785 in English at 0105 SIO 333. February 22, Radio Australia on 15415 from Shepparton in English at 2220 SIO 444. February 23, Voice of Vietnam on 12020 from Suntay at 1250 SIO 333. And February 23, Bible Voice on 15470 in English at 1440 SIO 333. We have a special QSL card just for you. For your reception report, please send 1 IRC international reply coupon or $2 US. Return postage will be greatly appreciated. And friends, if you want to get the transcript of today's Pilipinas DX news and see our QSL card series, please visit http://filipinasdx.wordpress.com. That's http://filipinasdx.wordpress.com or http://filipinasdx.blogspot.com. Follow us also on Facebook, www.facebook.com/filipinasdx, or you may want to send us your comments, suggestions, reception logs, and informations to filipinasdx@yahoo.com. That's PILIPINASDX for filipinasdx@yahoo.com. This has been Henry Umaday for Wavescan in Antique, Central Philippines, saying mabuhay at maraming salamat po.
Thank you very much, Henry. And finally, a note here from the Danish Shortwave Club International from Anker Peterson in the DX Window publication. He says that their U.S. member, Richard D'Angelo, writes, the NASWA, or North American Shortwave Association, Winter Shortwave Listeners Festival was another good time in Plymouth Meeting, Pennsylvania, last weekend, March 1st and 2nd, thanks to the efforts of Rich Cuff and John Figliazzi and a great behind-the-scenes support group. The dates for the next Winter SWL Fest next year, 2014, have already been selected. They are February 28th to March 1st. By the way, Dan Ferguson, who has done just about everything for NASWA over the years, was selected as the recipient of the William P. Eddings Award as the club's Member of the Year. Dan is the ex-frequency manager, now retired, at the Voice of America, or International Broadcasting Bureau, here in the U.S. And we end with some music from Senegal. This is Tiani Sek and a song called Maria Chantal. Thanks for listening to Wavescan, the international DX program from Adventist World Radio, researched and written in Indianapolis by Adrian Peterson. Next week, the 75th anniversary of radio broadcasting in the Troubled Isles. We'll have European perspective and our Bangladesh DX report. QSL cards are available for your reports on this program, which you can send to Wavescan, Box 29235, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46229, USA. That's Wavescan, Box 29235, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46229, USA. Our email is wavescan@awr.org. That's wavescan@awr.org. I'm Jeff White at WRMI Shortwave in Miami. Till next week, good listening, everyone.
Bolingo nangai Maria Chantal, mo voto la makani si manga yeti kali Congo.